everyone, Pam Gregory, astrologer. I'm going to be speaking to you today about the first half of July and the full supermoon that we have coming up in Capricorn on the 3rd. Now, July is an important month because there's a shift in the nodal axis, but that doesn't happen until the 18th of July, so I'll be talking about that in my next update, but that's very important for us all. But let me first focus on the full supermoon. Now, this is happening very early in the month. It's happening on the 3rd of July at 4:38 a.m. Pacific and 12:38 p.m. UK time. Now, it's at 11 degrees and 18 minutes. And what a supermoon is, it means that the moon is much closer to the Earth and in its orbit. So this can increase the seismic potentials around the world because the gravitational pull is much greater. We'll see the moon as bigger and brighter than normal, which will be wonderful. Also, full moons are where our feelings and emotions generally come to a head, all the more so when the moon is closer. So we will have quite a peak around issues linked to Capricorn, which are issues linked to power and government, etc. Now, see where 11 degrees, 18 minutes of Capricorn falls in your chart, because normally they will be in your own individual birth chart. There'll be a sense of completion or closure or culmination happening in that house area, that area of life for you. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, you can download a free birth chart from my website. Go to the link below, get a free 2-part video series that you can use forever alongside these updates to help you to understand the meaning for you in your life with each update I do. So the other thing that full moons do, and particularly a supermoon being so close to the Earth, is bring something to light, because the light is shining very brightly on something around this time, perhaps linked to government, linked to control issues. And it's very interesting because the midpoint of the moon and Pluto at this full supermoon is at 20 degrees of Capricorn, which is very tightly conjunct the conjunction of Saturn and Pluto that we had on the 12th of January 2020 that began the whole pandemic. So are we seeing more light being shone on that and what unfolded from that time, particularly because Pluto is at 29 degrees of Capricorn and moving retrograde over those last 2-3 degrees of that sign. So it's digging deeper. And Pluto's process is always, as I've spoken about, to unearth anything that is not for our highest good. Saturn is also retrograde in Pisces, so going back over, retrograding, any deceits, Pisces, or illusions that we may have had over recent years. So this is going to be an interesting process because Saturn also acts as a reality check to illusions, dreams, etc. Could be an interesting period. Also, Capricorn, it's the sign of government, yep, for sure. It's the sign of the top-down structures that have held power over us traditionally, but it's also going forward the sign of building. It's the sign of manifestation. What are we, okay, if one old world is collapsing and old systems are collapsing, very much signaled by Pluto moving through those last few degrees of Capricorn, what is the new that we are building? Capricorn is very linked to manifestation, building for the long term. Very positively, that sign is linked to integrity and self-responsibility as well. And those themes are reinforced at this full supermoon by the fact that the sun is trine to Saturn, which is the ruler of Capricorn. So that's a very positive aspect, again, suggesting building something strategically for the long term. That trine also reinforces another trine at this full supermoon of the moon trine to Jupiter. And this is beautiful because this is really talking about our futuristic vision in building strategically for the long term, which is linked to a higher vision, linked to higher consciousness, linked to faith, really. So very, very positive. So it isn't that we have to wait for the collapse of the old world before we can begin the new. These two processes are happening simultaneously, and this, I think, is very much evidenced at this full supermoon. So what are we now building at this time? Well, as I've talked in recent videos, and I will be talking all of this year, it's very much linked to our choices. Let me share the chart with you. So I've got a lot to say here. This looks quite complicated, and it is. So one thing I've been talking about, which is very dominant really all the way through to November, is Pluto Square to this nodal axis, north node and south node. It's in a T-square. And this is very much to do with our choices. Are we going to keep falling back to our old patterns of the past because they feel familiar and therefore safe in some way? Or are we going to step out like the Fool in the Tarot and step into the new? That theme will become stronger once the North Node shifts into Aries on the 18th of July for the next 18 months. But Pluto is the planet of death and rebirth. So for many, many people right now, it's a whole life reevaluation. Many endings are happening in relationships, in jobs, in living location, philosophy, belief system, many, many big endings in life, but equally that is creating the space for new opportunities and new beginnings. So with this seesaw of this very important Pluto square, the nodal axis, all year, keep asking yourself in your choices, are you falling back to victim, or are you moving forwards to become an empowered co-creator? Are you falling backwards to victim, or are you moving forwards to be an empowered co-creator? Because your soul knows which to choose. And the soul is always very involved in the nodal axis. It tends to operate at the soul level, although obviously it has manifestations in your day-to-day life as well. The nodal axis runs deep. And so we are digging deep with that Pluto square, the nodal axis. And that doesn't happen often. That's quite rare. The other thing involved in the T-square to point out is that Eris here at 25 of Aries is also involved in this T-square, and so is Homer, dwarf planet Homer, at 2817 of Libra, almost tipping into the beginning of Scorpio. So it's all part of this. So Eris, as you will remember, is the truth teller, the feisty street fighter. Her myth was she wasn't invited. She was the only goddess not invited to the wedding on Mount Olympus, and so she turned up anyway and created mayhem by throwing a golden apple into the crowd of the other goddesses, saying, "For the fairest," and of course they all squabbled, and that is said in myth to have led to the Trojan War. So she is utterly uncompromising. She's the sister of Mars. She's warrior energy, and she is all about truth, justice, equality, social inclusion, and she will absolutely fight to the end on those principles. She's uncompromising, as I say. So she is helping the revelation and the collapse of the old order, whereas Homer, this beautiful dwarf planet Homer, linked to the Hawaiian goddess of fertility, physically Homer's dwarf planet is even egg-shaped because she's very linked to fertility, creativity, regeneration. And she is a very powerful symbol for New Earth, as I've spoken many times before. So we have this seesaw of the collapse of the old and at the same time the birth of the new. Are you stepping forwards into empowered co-creator, or are you falling back into traditional patterns of victimhood that we've had through our lives? Many of us, myself included in that. Another very important, there are 3 T-squares here actually, another very important dwarf planet that's involved in this full moon is the planet Salacia. Now, Salacia is almost at 10 degrees of Aries, so it is squaring the sun and the moon. It's forming another T-square to the sun and moon. And Salacia is mermaid energy. She was the wife of Neptune in myths. She's linked to the shimmering sunlight and moonlight on the seas. And to me, she is very, very connected. She is the dwarf planet connected to photonic light. And as we know, because the Earth is moving through the galactic current sheet, we are experiencing huge waves of this very white, bright, diamondy, sparkly, high-frequency light coming in surges for us. Very much a key ingredient of our evolution that is helping, together with the solar flares, the new cosmic and galactic energy coming in for us. It's increasing the spin of our cells. It's literally increasing the spin of our cells to help us move from carbon to crystalline. We are moving increasingly towards the light body, which is just wonderful. And on the theme of Salacia in myth, if I move to her husband in myth, who is Neptune. I haven't drawn this in here, but Neptune will be long-term at 27 of Pisces, square to the galactic center, which is at 27 of Sagittarius. Now, it will remain in that square until the end of 2025. So what that square is doing is really encouraging us to use our imagination, our visioning ability to blend with this energy coming from the galactic center. And that is kind of plasma with which we create our worlds. So we are interacting, interweaving as individuals with our imagination, with our dreaming, with our visioning, to bring in our reality individually and collectively. We are weaving with the plasma from the galactic center. That is increasing our psychic sensitivity going forwards. It's increasing the sense of surrender to the divine. And I read something recently, I wish I could remember who wrote it because I credit them, but it was just a phrase that said, you can only receive with an open hand. So we have to move from this 3D efforting, struggle, push, write the business plan, to just surrender, release, and just blend with high level energy, high frequency energy, and things will land for us. Things will come in for us as a frequency match. So this will also birth a greater sense of interconnectedness to the cosmos and to all other living beings. So this is quite a beautiful process over particularly the next 3 years, while Saturn is also in Pisces, which emphasizes Pisces, which Neptune rules. Another aspect which is important to talk about here is Uranus at 21 of Taurus. And remember, Uranus now is moving on to degrees where it hasn't been since 1940 because it has an 84-year cycle. And it is squaring Venus and Mars in Leo. Now, this will have kind of 3 possible expressions astrologically. This is very beautiful for any kind of creativity, particularly vibrant color, vibrant beauty, because I see Venus, Mars in Leo as kind of big beauty, color, big, dramatic. And Taurus is ruled by Venus, so it's also linked to beauty. But perhaps beauty in solid form. This can be, pottery or ceramics or sculpture, tending that way. But it could also be art in general and aesthetics, but it tends to be more solid. Taurus is fixed earth, so it tends to have a tangibility to it. So big, dramatic beauty, zany, Uranus square Venus, zany, vivid colors, that kind of thing. So wonderful for that kind of artistic, creative project. If Venus and Mars are falling in your 5th house and your 7th house, again, check out your birth chart. If you're not in a relationship, this can bring a sudden out of the blue relationship that you weren't expecting with someone foreign, younger, often just out of the blue. It can be a bit of a wild ride. It's not steady. It's on off. Yes, no, but it can emotionally awaken you. Or the other range of manifestation is financial, because Taurus is very much linked to banking, currencies, wealth, ruled by Venus. And whenever you have Uranus-Venus hard aspect, this can lead to some volatility of some kind in financial markets too. So any of those three levels of expression may manifest. On the 7th of the month, we have Mars, which by then has moved into an exact quincunx with Pluto. And this is really individual power, Mars, running up against state governmental power, Pluto in Capricorn. So by then, Mars will have moved to 29 degrees of Leo. Leo very much along with Eris, the sign of sovereignty, autonomy, independence, a personal sense of power, whereas Pluto is the top-down power. So this is the clash. So it isn't just individual versus state, it's actually internal, an internal sense of power versus an externally imposed power. And there's a bit of an echo here of the whole full moon itself, because Capricorn is to do with being out in the world, visible, often successful, being a teacher or a master or a leader or something. Whereas Cancer is much more inward. It's a sensitive water sign. It's much more concerned with nurturing others, the family, your loved ones, and feeling nurtured yourself, turning inwards to your own individual emotional needs. So here we have, again, the outer Capricorn and the inner. And this full moon is asking us, do we have the right balance with that in your own life? Are you too much outer and not enough inner? Or the other way around? But really, this Mars, which will be by the 7th quincunx Pluto, has a similar theme. And the big soul direction for us, particularly when the nodal axis moves into Aries, ruled by Mars, is our inner authority. Big time. We have to discover, remember our inner authority. And by the 10th of the month, the moon will have moved on to be conjunct Eris by then, all the way around here, and will be squaring Pluto. And at the same time, by then, Mercury will have moved on to oppose Pluto. So what I've just been talking about, their feeling issues around power, thinking obsessively around issues of power, will come up very strongly, and particularly because Mercury and Pluto are at the 29th degree. Again, it's a little like Mars and Pluto on the 7th of the month, 29 degrees of their signs, Leo and Capricorn. There can be a sense of urgency. This has got to be sorted. This is the last effort, as it were. So this is going to be very interesting to see how this unfolds. I'm going to stop sharing here. Another thing to mention, which begins in the first half of the month, is that Mercury's been moving very quickly recently through Gemini and Cancer, and it moves into Leo on the 11th of July and moves very rapidly also through Leo until the 28th. Now that's pretty speedy. So again, we are going to be getting some fast information and dramatic information, I suggest, coming into us. Now it's interesting that the outer planets are all moving towards becoming retrograde. We have Saturn retrograde, Neptune retrograde, Pluto retrograde. Uranus is going to join that outer planet retrograde party, also in August next month. So when there is retrogradation, it is a call to turn inwards, to become more introspective, to go back over, as those planets are retrograding through the degrees, to go back over. And again, it's asking us to go back over issues around Pluto power, Saturn control issues, rules and regulations, Neptune, any deception issues that may have come up. It tends to be the less positive aspects that we are going back over to revisit. to see how they can be improved once those planets start to move retrograde again, which they do broadly end of this year, beginning of next. So we're going to go through quite a few months until sort of October, November, until the outer planets start to move direct again. So this is a period of introspection, but use that richly. Use that to really reevaluate what we've been going through, particularly over the last 3 years, and say, could we have done it better? Could we have done it differently? Would we do it the same way again once the planets move direct? You know, this is another reevaluation big time for us, in that so many of them are moving retrograde. Now, I really want to say here that I want to revisit this because I'm feeling it so strongly, that when we have a lot of noise and drama in the 3D world, and we are going to have an awful lot of noise and an awful lot of drama and an awful lot of chaos in the 3D world, because we're in this rare situation of so much high frequency energy coming into us, because we're shifting through the galactic current sheet, because we have massive surges of photonic light that we haven't had for around 12,000 years, because we have huge surges of solar flares that again are a result of the drop in the sun's and the Earth's magnetic shield. So we've lost a lot of our cotton wool buffer. These are rare times, and therefore the very great amount of high frequency energy necessarily is causing turbulence in the overall energy field. When things were much more 3D, we didn't have anything rocking the boat as severely as we do now. But of course, it has tremendous purpose. This is an accelerated evolution for humanity. So everything begins with energy, the invisible. Energy is foundational and fundamental to anything that manifests. Everything begins with energy. And I mean, our bodies are printouts of our consciousness. And we kind of know that because we know that a lot of health conditions or, diseases have an emotional basis that began in the ether, as it were, and have now made manifest in the physical. So our bodies are a printout of consciousness. The physical is always the final expression, the final manifestation of what the energy, the invisible energy, created. So in order to change things, it is much harder work to battle the physical, the final expression of how the energy is manifested. It is much more efficient to go to the root of working with the invisible, working with the energy. I hope I'm making sense here. So although there will be so much drama to catch your attention, be disciplined, move from victim to co-creator, yes, you can be aware of what's going on in the world, but don't, I suggest, become emotionally, negatively engaged in it. Don't go into fear, don't go into panic, don't go into anger, because then you're quantum entangling with what you don't want and then blaming it for giving you a hard time. I've said that many times. Try and put all of your energy, focus, and attention on your internal state, because that is where everything begins for you in your reality. And remember, in ancient philosophy, they say that each of us is the only one here. And I know that's really, really hard to get your head around. But nevertheless, it is absolutely unequivocal, in my view, that everything in our reality begins with our energy, our focus and attention. Where are we putting, what are we feeding in a quantum way with our energy and attention? Because everything cascades from our frequency. So I'd really suggest to you that as many times as you can in your day, find stillness and find bliss. Find joy in the simplicity of birdsong. Smell the damp earth. Celebrate the spring green leaves. Laugh, hug, and milk it, celebrate it, over-egg it. Because that's what will increase your frequency, and you broadcast that to the world like a lighthouse. And some of you may be sitting there, particularly if you haven't listened to me before, thinking, has that woman got any idea what is going on in the world? And she's talking about, celebrating birdsong. Yeah, I've got a lot of idea about what's going on in the world, but we don't change it by going round the hamster wheel of war, death, misery, poverty that we have done for thousands of years, and keep repeating those victim fear patterns. It hasn't worked before. It's not going to work now. We have to up our game to step beyond the hamster wheel, to go to the root of how reality is formed, which is why I'm suggesting in these very simple ways we work with our energy in really, really for free for all, simple ways. And I suggest them to you because they worked for me over many, many years when I was in situations of extreme challenge and I had no other resources to turn to but myself, which is how I developed these very simple techniques. So see yourself as the lighthouse. See yourself as just beaming light out to the world. You increase your heart's toroidal field when you do that. Your energy becomes more coherent, but the bigger the light, the stronger the light, the broader the light, the more people you infect with your light. And in my previous work, when I was teaching management people, I studied a lot of research from the big business schools of Yale and Harvard. And what they were studying was when a presenter to a business audience was in very positive, confident, convincing energy state, their success rate with the audience was much better than if they were nervous or edgy or where they appeared to lack confidence. And so it isn't just the content that we are sharing as presenters, it's the energy exchange. We all of the time, day-to-day life, way outside the presenter situation, every interaction we have with people, we are infecting them with our energy, positively or negatively. We leave every person we meet, even in a shop, even with a smile, better or worse than we found them. And we can even do this silently we radiate our state of being, and other people feel that. The more you are in this very positive state, the more I honestly believe that you are bubble wrapped from the worst excesses, I've said this before, of whatever is manifesting in 3D, because there are many different dimensions that exist in the same space. Just like two people can go into a haunted house, one person sees the ghost and the other doesn't, it's the same space, but they have different experiences because they're operating in slightly different frequencies and dimensions. There are many, many dimensions on this earth. And we change our experience of them by shifting our frequency. By shifting our frequency, particularly upwards, to be more light, to be in more joy, to feel more love, to laugh more often. That's where we need to focus, because what we are actually doing then, in physics terms, we are altering the quantum wave structure. We are altering the quantum wave structure. And this is something, way back in the Egyptian mystery schools, they understood. They would train people to change their physical reality by changing their frequency. And this is a mastery we have to relearn. We have to remember, because the principles are incredibly simple. And so when we do this, when we shift from a situation of fear and anger and panic and whatever else, and move to a very loving frequency, without any effort, we will start to magnetize people, opportunities, situations into our life that are just like synchronicities. It's just like the magic zone. We don't even have to try. It's effortless, because you can only experience that which you are the frequency of. It's just like a radio dial. Whatever you're tuned to, you tune to hard rock, you can only hear hard rock. You tune to classical music, you can only hear classical music. That's exactly how it operates in the universe. So we are actually creating higher timelines right now that did not exist before. because we are doing so well on our frequency. We're ahead of expectation. I was talking to Magenta Pixie about this in our solstice conversation this week. Tim Wilde has also said this. Diana Cooper has said this. We are ahead of expectation in terms of our evolutionary progress, where we were expected to get to, which is really wonderful. So we're creating new timelines that we have never experienced before just by our energy. And we really are now stepping into a new energetic hologram. And I know many of you can feel that. The more of us do this, the more momentum this tidal wave of love, you might call it, will have to further accelerate our evolution. And it's very important that this energetic hologram, I'd suggest, is anchored in our hearts. Because moving forwards, the astrology has a lot of head energy. Pluto over the next 18 months is going to be moving into Aquarius, higher mind, intellect. Sedna, just a couple of days ago, moved into Gemini, mind, communication. We have a lot of focus on intellect, head, mind, technology, AI. And so in order to retain our humanity, I'd suggest we must be anchored in our hearts. And I remember a wonderful channeling of the Z's that Lee Harris's guides are called the Z's. They said that our connection to the cosmos actually comes from the heart. And they also said that the energetic blueprint of each of our individual birth charts is imprinted in the heart. And it is that with which we are interacting with the cosmos, which is why astrology works. That kind of blue fuses for me, actually. So know that we are integrating new energies from the cosmos. Know that we are integrating new photonic light, and that you are an alchemist weaving heart energy. Each of us is an alchemist weaving heart energy right now. Stay in your heart, stay anchored in love, with so much heady technology and AI coming in, and that is what will anchor you in your humanity. But really would suggest that you tune out the noise. It's going to be 10 tons of it. Don't let it distract you. Sit in the stillness and love in the bliss. More and more of us are doing this. We're coming together in large groups at particular times, like equinoxes and solstices, or even a small group, even 2 of you, actually. But groups magnify this beautiful heart energy of love. And in my conversation with Magenta, she was channeling the collective consciousness of 9, which she's done for many years. And they were saying that we're moving from light workers to light warriors. And I was thinking about this, and I was thinking, well, maybe we are also moving to become love warriors. Love warriors, because not in a fighting sense, because actually, again, thinking of how physics works, both light and love are very high frequency energies, which just dissolve the darkness. I mean, there's no fight, there's no battle. They just dissolve it, they engulf it, which helps our rapid move towards unity consciousness, which is where we're headed. That's where we have to be. I've used the analogy before. We're both at, we're all at an airport. Some people are on the fast track passenger list, others are on the slower track, but we all get on the same plane at the end of the day. So I hope that helps you. I know I've referred to some of these things before, but maybe I've said it in a different way, used different words or phrases that will help to really empower you. Think of this seesaw of victim to empowered co-creator. Which you're going to choose? This is such a pivotal year for this, for our evolution of humanity. You can either go back to the old patterns and act as a ball and chain on our human evolution, which, by the way, is going to happen anyway, just extends the pain. Or you're going to say, no, I'm going to do everything I can to make this an even faster track to somewhere truly beautiful, where humanity has never been before. And that's what we're creating right now from love. So hope that's helped you. God bless. Very big update coming in the next video. And have a wonderful full supermoon in Capricorn. It's going to be big and beautiful if there are no clouds out there. And don't forget to check where this falls in your chart, and very much see this as lighting up what we have not seen before and moving us forwards to the new moon in Cancer, which is going to be happening on the 17th, and I'm going to be talking about next time. God bless. Bye for now. Thanks so much for listening.